Hello again. We're back to the library at Mount Char, chapter 12. The library. Sorry. Think of how Caroline had seemed to recede. Steve was expecting something. A yank, a sense of forward motion. Something. But it wasn't like that. He stepped into the darkness. A moment later, he stood on a dry, ancient oak. Carolyn was waiting, hands poised to catch. Well, that wasn't so. Then, seeing where he was, he staggered back against the wall behind him. Jesus fuck. Yeah, Carolyn said, relaxing a little. That was pretty much my reaction. At least, you didn't faint. A lot of people faint. She steadied herself against a nearby bookcase and set about peeling off her leg warmers. What? I mean, Jesus, what is this place? It's my father's library. Something occurred to her. Well, I suppose it's mine now. She blinked. Mine. Library? Steve said, his voice flat, toneless. At his side, Naga yawned. He patted her shoulder. Yeah, sweetie, me too. He looked around, gasping. Jesus! Fuck. He said again, this time with a real reverence. The library was vast. It was easily the largest structure he has ever been inside. Ever heard of, ever imagined? Bookshelves stretched across the floor as far as the eyes could see. He saw a globe of light high overhead, like skyscraper high, and a ceiling somewhere beyond that. It was impossible to estimate how far away the ceiling was. Thousands of feet? Miles? The space he stood in was higher than the Superdome, wider than the airport terminal at Atlanta. You could fly a plane in here, he said. Maybe not a 737, but a Cessna. Easy. Probably even a Lear. Yeah, I guess. Her voice was muffled by cloth. Steve glanced over and saw Carolyn was taking off her sweater. He clapped a hand over his eyes. What are you doing? Getting out of these ridiculous clothes. Want a robe? One size fit all, and they're clean. Cloth hit the floor with a soft rustle. What? No, I'm fine. He peeked, just a little. Carolyn's bicycle shorts were puddled around her ankles. He turned his back to her and opened his eyes. A moment later, she stepped into view wearing a gray-green robe with some rough cloth, vaguely monk-like. It suited her better than the Christmas sweaters. Are you hungry? Caroline said. I'm starving. What? Food, Caroline said, rubbing her belly with one hand. All of a sudden, I'm starving again. Walk with me, okay? I'll show you around. He blinked, remembering the modest house with the crumbling porch. When she had said hidden, he had thought of an underground bunker, something like a fallout shelter. But this? Big. How can it be so big? It's not that big. I paced it once. It's only about 2 miles on an edge, give or take. Edge? Yeah. We're in a pyramid. See? She poked a finger up. Following her finger, he saw the pyramid's apex. 3 equilateral triangles, meeting at a point impossibly high overhead. Oh, Steve said. I see. But what I meant was, he did some quick algebra in his head. 1.75 miles is a lot of square footage for the neighborhood. Aren't you violating the building's code or the laws of physics? Building code, probably. None of the writing is none of the wiring is grounded, but the laws of physics don't apply here. Whatever the fuck might you be talking about, Carolyn dear? Can you freak out while we walk? Pretty please? She jingled the shoelace impatiently. David, now almost completely swallowed by blackness, bobbed at the end of it. The floor was mostly unfinished wood planks, wide and smooth acres of them. But he and Carolyn stood on Jade, the end point of the main access path, road, running the length of the floor. It was as wide as a 3-lane highway, all of it neatly inlaid with jade tiles. It glowed faintly underfoot. Carolyn set out down the road, walking quickly, not waiting to see if he would follow. Steve trotted after her. What's that? He asked, pointing. About halfway between him and the far wall, something that looked like DNA stretched up to the sky, thin and spindly. It was clapped by a jade disc. Maybe it's a lookout deck, like on the roof of a skyscraper? Just over the platform, a cloud of lights rotated softly, bathing the hall with a warm candlelight glow. That's where we're headed. Man, he said, this place is huge. Are we, still inside the house somehow? No, the house wasn't important. The only about it is that mattered was the only thing about it that mattered was the front door. It's one of the place where the library and normal space overlap. Defensible choke point, you see. Father was very particular about who got to see his work. What do you mean, his work? Carolyn spread her arms out to the uncounted thousands of books. His work. One guy wrote all of this? There are millions of books in here. Yeah, like I said, Father was old. He did a few pages every day. Something on one thing, sometimes on another. Over time, it adds up. Wow. Here and there along the jade corridor, there were teetering stacks of unshelved books, like trays for scrolls, mini shelves for folios. Naga was sniffing one such now. Actually, her look reminded him of the one Petey got when he was about to defile the carpet. He trotted over and patted her on the shoulder. Don't pee on the magic library, okay, sweetie? Carolyn, still walking, called back over her shoulder. No such thing as magic, Steve. If you say so. Steve looked around, then up. He blinked. The sides of the pyramid that were overhead had bookshelves as well. What? Are they nailed to the ceiling or something? All of this was 1/2 mile or more above him, far enough that he could see that their layout made a fractal pattern, complete with little clearings here and there. Squinting, he could make out tiny couches and desks, all of them apparently immune to gravity. Three broad, ruby walkways radiated out from the geometric center of the ceiling. It was like looking down when your flight was coming for a landing. A couple of seconds of this gave him vertigo. He reached out to steady himself on a pile of books. He grabbed the top book, an oversized volume bound in purple leathers, and set out after Carolyn, who was moving away at a surprising rate. It was too heavy to fully open while he walked, but peeking in, he could see that the pages were all handwritten. So, if these aren't magic, what are they about? Different things. There's 12 main categories. She glanced over. The violet one are mathematics. The ones are that one's a primer on alternate geomet- geometries, I think. He cracked it open and peeked inside. It looked medieval, like one of those, what you call them, a book of hours? That that one's at least 20,000 years old. And if the Inquisition caught you with it, they would start heating up the thumb screws. Really? Very curious now. He stopped at the next tall pile of books and used it as a pedestal for the book. He cracked it open at a random spot. The pages were volume what? Thick vellum, crammed with neatly inked pictograms arranged in vertical rows like cuneiform. Or maybe hieroglyphics. He couldn't read the writings or even guess what language it might be in. A couple of pages later, he found a 2-page illustration, pale ink inlaid with gold leaf, hand drawn and faded with age. It had a weird aesthetic part tentacle diagram, neatly ruled plane, measured angles, squiggles that were probably equations, and part battle scenes, intersected with the lines and parallelograms. An army of long-necked, toothy things were chewing their way out of the hole in the sky. The forest below was littered with their corpses. A few survivors. They looked a little like giraffes, cowering before a man in a black robe. The hair on the back of Steve's neck all prickled. Her father's work. Behind him, Naga rumbled. She was hunched over, peering into the shadows between the shelves. Following her gaze, Steve thought he had saw a hint of motion. Out there in the dark, he patted Naga's neck, as much as to reassure himself as to calm her. Her muscles were tense, quivery. He glanced down the jaded corridor. Carolyn hadn't stopped. Now she was half a football field away, the black ball bobbing behind her on its shoelace. Carolyn? She didn't answer. Carolyn! He left the book on the pile and jogged to catch up with her, wiping the fingers that had touched it on his shirt. He caught up with her faster than he would have thought possible. It occurred to him that the jade floor might be helping him along somehow, like one of those sliding walks at an airport. I think I saw something moving back there, he said, panting a little. Hmm? Oh, yeah, you probably did. We have housekeepers. Remember the guys with the lawnmowers? Like him. They take care of the menial stuff. Dusting and shelving and the likes. They try to stay out of sight when real people are around. Well, that's creepy as fuck. And what was with that pic? He broke off. Damn! That come farther than he would have thought possible. Now, the DNA spiral was just ahead of them. From here, he could see that it was actually a staircase, however, enormous. It hung in mid-air, thousands of feet tall, but unsupported, leading to a vast cloud of light overhead. What is that? Carolyn pointed at the clouds. It's the universe. The normal one. I mean, the one you grew up in. Like a planetarium? Or, no, it's the real deal. The original. That's He trailed off, then sighed. How? How could a thing like that be? Do you know the word superset? Yes. I don't know. Maybe. Not really. He rubbed his temple. It sounds vaguely familiar. She patted his shoulders. Don't beat yourself up too much. It's a lot to take in, especially at first. It was the same way for me. Uh, Good of you to say. The library is a separate universe, a superset of the one you grew up in. There's a little bit of overlap, but not much. A separate universe? Yeah, there are some very dangerous people who would do anything at all to get their hands on Father's work. He tried earthly fortresses, towers, keeps, some very advanced defense mechanism, but anything that can be locked can be unlocked. The stakes are enormous, and there are some close calls. Eventually, he created this place. But he looked up at the clouds of lights overhead. I mean, the universe is like big, right? Yes and no. Size is notional. It has to do with the structure of space. The door we came through was a gateway, but it's also sort of a transition function. You wouldn't be wrong to say that going through the transition makes you bigger. I feel the same size. Well, you also wouldn't really be right to say it either. It's sort of mathy. Steve rolled his eyes, or perhaps looked to the heavens for strength. I don't think she's being deliberately obtuse, and the words sound like English. Think of the library as the wrapper a what? Think of the library as the wrapper a Big Mac comes in. Okay. What's the Big Mac? The universe. The other one. That's somewhat helpful, Steve said. Thank you. As long as you're feeling comprehensible, here's another one. What are we going to do up there? I need to hang David. She jiggled the shoelace, and he bobbed, weightless. The black ball had grown as they walked. Now, only the bottom half of one foot was still visible. The shoelace tied to his hairy toe. Hang him? Yeah. Plus, I left some food in a cooler. And there's a lawn chair and a barbecue grill. I thought we could have a picnic. Do you like picnics? Sure. Picnics are nice, I guess. She flashed him a smile, and to his astonishment, giggled a little. Then she started up the stairs. Food! Steve looked up, daunted. Even setting aside both his fears and heights, and the fact that the stairs hovered unsupported in thin air, the towering spiral was easily the tallest man made thing he'd ever seen. 3,000 feet, minimal. Probably more. No railings either. The disc at the top looked small enough to hide behind the thumbnail. You really want to walk all the way up this? Yeah, it's not that bad. I mean, it's not as bad as it looks. And indeed, in just a few seconds, she was somehow traveling upwards 50 feet or more. No elevator? No. Father thought they were ugly. I could fly you up if you like. He considered this. I'll pass. Thanks, though. Oh, come on. It's good exercise. She bounced on tippy toes a couple of times, flexing her calf muscle. Keep you fit. And there stay. Still hesitant, Carolyn said something in lion speak, possibly about lunch. Naga started up the stairs without so much of glancing back. Traitor, Steve called. There's also beer, Carolyn said. Beer? Beer. Yeah, Steve said. Okay. Part 2. Part 2. It was still a bit of a climb. About the equivalent of 5 normal flights of stairs. But nothing like the pack some sandwiches and we'll make a weekend of it alpine ordeal we had envisioned when looking up from the base. Steve mentioned his mm, Steve mentioned his thought about the airport sidewalk. Carolyn said sort of, then explained, if that was the word, that the jade surface changed the way distance work. Steve said, oh. A few steps later, he looked down to see that they were over 1,000 feet up. Numb now, his only real reaction was to be grateful that there wasn't much of a breeze. Just as his calf muscles were starting to burn, they emerged at the top of the tower. It was capped by a sort of observation platform, also jade, about a foot thick and about as wide as a football field. Steve was susceptible to vertigo in tall buildings, but this was more like being in an airliner. For some reason, that wasn't as bad. Anyway, it felt rock solid underfoot. Over in one corner, he saw a barbecue grill and half a dozen lawn chairs. His stomach rumbled. Then he noticed something else. Near the geometric center of the disc, the cloud of lights hung low, close enough to reach up and touch. Under that point, he saw a small brown lump on the floor. He took a couple of steps towards it, squinting. Carolyn didn't follow. She was looking up at the lights. Hey, who's this? The lump was a young woman, barely more than a child, really sleeping on the floor, curled in a fetus position. Another one of your sisters? What? Carolyn frowned. No, there shouldn't be anyone here. Move away, Steve. Her tone was chilly again, the way it had been in the car. That's got to be Mitharangi. Who? Mitharangi. One of father's anointed from the third age. Nobunaga's sister, I think. She was the sun until a couple hours ago. The sun? Remember when it got dark out a couple hours ago? I changed her back. Uh, if you say so. What's she doing up here? I don't know. She should have died up there. Carolyn walked around Steve, heading towards the girl. She must have climbed down somehow. From where? She pointed up. Steve followed her finger, then froze. He hadn't noticed at first, but this close, the points of light in the clouds overhead weren't really points anymore. He saw now that each of them was itself a tiny swirling spiral, almost, but not quite, frozen. Galaxies? He reached up to touch one, and Porusne Ablaka? The girl's voice was high, childlike. She awoke now, propped up on her elbows. She was a platinum blonde and pretty, if a trifle smudged. Her eyes were a shade of gray he'd only ever seen on battleships. Carolyn squatted down next to her, smiling. You'll be with him soon. She stroked the child's forehead with the back of her right hand. Her left moved to the small of her back and emerged with an obsidian knife. What the hell? Carolyn, no! Carolyn stabbed the girl in the neck, just once, then bounced backwards, getting a surprising amount of air. She came down in a 3-point stance, knife at the ready, her eyes fixed on the girl. All three of them froze for a moment. Were the murder exhibited at a wax museum? Steve thought, horrified to the point of giggles. Blood squirted from the child's neck in a finger-thick stream. Once, then again, it landed on the jade with a splatter sound. Another squirt. A puddle began to collect. The girl touched her hand to her neck. Her fingers came away red. She showed them to Carolyn. Morupa? Morupa Kasita? Carolyn smiled the way a gargoyle might. Cha se abuka. The girl slumped. Another squirt of watery spray, weaker this time. Jesus! Steve screamed. Carolyn! What did you do? He ran for the girl, thinking, perhaps, to hold his hand over the wound. Staunch the bleeding somehow. But his course took him near Carolyn somehow. Passing her, he tripped. He hit the jaded floor hard. It's all right, Steve. His front tooth was rough now, newly chipped. He tasted blood. All right. It's not all right. That kid's just a kid, Carolyn. What did she ever do to you? He felt Naga near him, muscular and violent. Carolyn spoke without emotion. She's 60,000 years old, and she's loyal to father. So fucking what? He wasn't quite screaming. Carolyn blinked. You have no idea what the stakes are, Steve. You don't understand about father. How dangerous this is. She's just a kid, Carolyn. Steve scrambled to his feet and went to the girl. She crumbled at his sweatpants with one bloody hand. Oh, she clutched at his sweatpants with one bloody hand, pleading in a language he didn't know. His lips, her lips, were blue. Steve lifted her hand away, inspecting the wound. Her carotid, her carotid artery gaped open, a lipless mouth. Hold still, he said. Ow. Carolyn puts her hand on his shoulder. Don't. It'll be over in minutes. She didn't threaten him with the knife. Can I? Would you mind if I just held her hand? Naga paced between him and Carolyn, guarding him. No, Carolyn said. Too dangerous. Steve hesitated for a second, then took the girl's hand anyways. He could hear Carolyn's teeth gritting, but she didn't move to stop him. Matarangi's hands were small, bird-like in his palm. She looked at him with her gray eyes, pleading. I don't know what to do, Steve said to her. I'm so sorry. Maru Pan? She said again. Her voice was fading. What's she saying? It means, why are you doing this? Carolyn said. I'm so sorry. Steve reached out to her cheek, but she flinched away from his touch. Her eyelids drooped. Then she was gone. There, Carolyn said. That's done. Steve shut the girl's eyes, then looked at his hands. They were red. He showed them to Carolyn. Yeah, I guess so. Seeing the look on his face, she seemed to return to herself a little bit. Her face fell. You don't understand, she said again. You got that right, he was thinking. However, handy she might be with that knife. I'm a lot bigger than she is, he was thinking. We're not that far from the edge. Carolyn's expression darkened. Her hand drifted to the small of her back. Don't. Don't what? His tone was pleasant. Just don't, okay? I won't kill you, but I'll hurt you if I have to. I don't want to. I really don't want to, but I will. Then, pleading, Steve, let me explain. Okay, he said. Fine. Mitharangi might have looked like a child, but she wasn't. What then? She rubbed her forehead. I'm not sure. Not exactly. The records are lost, or maybe destroyed, but she was very important. She was one of Father's key lieutenants. If she was still loyal to him, and there's no reason to think anything else, she might have found a way to bring him back. Okay. All right. Fine. But, so what? Carolyn boggled at him, laughed a little. we, we really are from different worlds. You know that? Yes. Yes, That thought has crossed my mind once or twice as well. Can we maybe try to explain it to me? Small words. Father was. She trailed off, then smiled a little. You know, I know literally every word ever spoken, but I can't think of a single one that eloquent to your question. Oh, sorry, adequate to your question. Father was father. That's not much help. I know. Carolyn. Carolyn held her hand up. Give me a minute. She pinched her chin for several seconds, then looked up at him. When one of my brothers was about 9, father tasked him with convincing a deep one to accept him as an apprentice. Deep one? A giant squid, sort of. Oh. Michael tried and tried, but the deep one wouldn't go for it. Something to do with the forest god, or maybe he just hated people. Probably that was the real reason. But we still didn't understand how father worked. We were young then. My brother tried to explain the situation, but father wouldn't listen. He said my brother was not properly motivated. She shuddered. You okay? I just, even hearing those words, not properly motivated, I want to throw up. You can stop if you want. No, thanks. But no. You need to understand this. She was looking up at the light overhead. The iron was back in her voice. So, what happened? He got a hot poker and burned out Michael's eyes. What? Jesus. He blinked. He blinded the kid? Yeah, blinded him. Well, not the way you probably mean. Not permanently. How can that... The white catalog, Jennifer's catalog, is medicine. Exotic medicine. None of our physical wounds were ever permanent. Father could heal anything. Jennifer was even better. That's convenient. Well, I suppose, yes. It had its moments, but there are costs too. Philosophical costs. Now, I really don't understand. Carolyn knelt at the puddle of the child's blood. Her back was to him, but the blood was still not yet coagulated, shiny. He could see her face reflected in it. It was different for us. For you, Americans, if things get bad enough, well, you always have an out. Suicide? Death. But you guys didn't? No. Father burned Michael's eyes out every night, over and over. The rest of us had to attend him, had to watch. Each time took about 20 minutes. The first eye was quick, but after Michael had to watch one eye, you see, he'd watch as father, you know, heated the poker back up. The next morning, Jennifer would grow them both back. Both eyes, you see. And then they'd do it again. The muscle of her back bunched and coiled like thick snake under her robe as she spoke. What happened? How did it end? Carolyn snarled. In the puddle of the child's blood, Steve saw a flash of white teeth reflected. Michael became motivated. She spat the words out like someone vomiting up rotten food. After after 11 days of this, my brother concocted a way to bow to the deep one to his will. Concocted a way to bow the deep one to his will. She was trembling. It crossed his mind to go to her, to touch her shoulders and offer comfort. But he didn't quite dare. That's the worst thing I've ever heard of. That, Carolyn said, his father. He wasn't even really angry. It was routine, just a discipline thing. Do you see? Steve thought about it before he answered. Yeah, maybe I do. A little bit, anyways. And this kid, what's her name? Mithroni? Mitharangi. She's buddies with this guy? Well, she was. Steve groaned, feeling sick. He went to the edge of the platform and looked down. I went up to the top of the World Trade Center once, he said. This is higher. Yes, a lot. Let's say I believe you about the girl. Do you? I don't know. Maybe. She looked harmless to me, he shrugged. But I'm not used to being up this high. Maybe the rules are different up here. Are they? I don't know that there are any rules, Carolyn said. I won. That's the only rule I'm aware of. Why me? He spoke softly. Why am I here? I don't understand. You're a klutz, Steve. I need someone to drop the magazine. I couldn't do it myself. Couldn't even look at it. David might have seen it in my mind. That's it? You expected me to believe that you dragged me into this because I'm clumsy? That's why you ruined my life? Oh, you're exaggerating. Steve cut himself off. Peace of mind is not the absence of conflict. but the ability to cope with it. That helped a little bit. You fucking framed me for fucking murder, Carolyn. Then tried to get me eaten alive by wild dogs. Remember? He patted Naga on the shoulder. Naga remembers. Naga shoulders bumped Steve in solidarity. The two of them glared at Carolyn. Okay, fine, yes. There's a bit more to it than just that you're clumsy. Well, that's progress. He and Naga exchange a glance. Do please go on. Why me? I'll explain. I really will. But first, I need to hang David. She wiggled the shoelace. Blackness had swallowed him completely, even his last hairy toe. Steve felt his eyes go wide. The blackness around David has grown noticeably in just a few minutes. Now, even from 5 feet away, Steve felt the heat. It was like a furnace. He took a half step back. What's happening to him? Remember how I said he was frozen in time? I guess. The blackness around David had a fluid quality, the surface swirling. And do you remember what he was doing when I froze him? Is this a quiz? More like a teaching method. You will understand better if I pull it out of you. Do you remember? Well, yeah, I guess. He was dying, right? And you just given him a little zap to the pain center of his brain? You said it was the theoretical upper limit of suffering. Then under his breath, I mean, damn. Exactly. But here's the difference. Suffering, normal suffering, is transient. What was perceived as an emotion is just a quick connection between three-dimensional space and one of the higher physical planes. Rage, joy, pleasure, whatever. The repercussion can echo for years, but the actual link usually only lasts for a fraction of a second. She gave her gargoyle smile again. Usually. But not this time. Exactly, she giggled. She jiggled the black sphere. Time isn't passing inside this, and I got it just right, too. David is connected to pure anguish, and he can't move on. She looked at Steve expectantly. Steve thought about this for a good long while, then gave up. So what? So, she said, the potential energy between the planes will continue to be realized. It's like a capacitor with infinite charge. Energy. He looked at David, now completely swallowed by blackness. The ball had grown visibly while they talked, and it was warmer now. You mean the black stuff? That's energy? Exactly. How big would it get? I'm not sure. 1,000,000 miles, give or take. That's why we came up here. We need to set him into the heavens, where there's room. Come again? By this time tomorrow, David will be our new son. Part 3. She reached into the clouds of the stars overhead and moved a shooting motion with her hand. Made a shooting motion with her hand. The light spun at her touch, not unlike the lazy Susan on the big corner table at a Chinese restaurant. When she had the right spot, she poked up a finger to stop the spinning and pulled. Space rushed past them, the scale of the things they saw shrinking. First, whole galaxy, then clouds, then individual stars, and finally planets. Recognize that one? Jupiter? His lips felt numb. No, it's Saturn. See the rings? Right. Saturn. That's what I meant. It's okay now. Hush for a second. I need to concentrate. Steve watched as she took David by the shoelace. Only a few inches were still poking out, and pushed him gently through the thin membrane separating the reality Steve had grown up in and the library. David seemed to shrink as he passed through. There we go, she said, and dusted her hands off theatrically. All done. How long before he's the sun? I'm not sure. A couple of hours? I'll come back and fix the orbit later. Can't have the wee little marbles bumping into one another, can we? Oh, can we? Steve, who was a plumber, spoke through dry lips. No, I guess not. When does he turn bright and yellow? Her face fell a little. Well, he doesn't. What do you mean? He's gonna stay like that? All black like? Yeah, it's a plane of anguish thing. Where will the light come from? She frowned. There, won't be quite as much light. I mean, plenty of heat. Anguish is very hot, and the gamma radiations and all of that, but there's not much for visible spectrum. It's gonna be dark all the time, even when the sun's up, forever. It'll be warm enough, she said defensively. No one will freeze, and people will adapt. Oops. Will adjust. Adjust? She nodded. Then, you can adjust to almost anything. Steve looked, but he couldn't find an answer in himself for that. After a long time, Carolyn spoke again. Well, that brings me to the other reason I brought you up here. The food? No. Well, yeah, that too. But the bigger reason is I want to make a gift to you. Steve, I know you don't understand. I'm still getting to that part, but I owe you a great deal. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I owe you everything. I've thought about this day for a very long time, and I wanted to say that, well, it'll make me very happy if I could pay you back in some small way. I brought you up here so that you can see David You can see David Ascension. She watched him, smiling and serious. Okay. Why? The next time you see the sun rise, you'll believe that I mean it when I say that I'll give you anything. Absolutely anything you can think of. You mean like a Maserati or? Sure, if you like, but more than that. She leaned in close. I can make you immortal, invincible, both if you like. There are things in the apothecary that will make you smarter than the smartest man who ever lived. Uh, the moment dragged out. Right now, I just want some barbecue. He noticed for the first time that Carolyn was sort of pretty when she laughed. Pretty good, Steve said. He licked his fingers. There had been steaks in the cooler, but also some things that looked like a giant scorpion and tasted a little bit like pork. Carolyn said it had died out in the Pleistocene area Pleistocene era. Hmm. But it was one of her favorites. Steve didn't ask. It was good, though, if a lot of food. Naga ate 3 of the thing by herself, plus 2 steaks and 8 hamburgers. Then she curled up like a house cat and went to sleep. Steve debated giving her his leftovers, but decided not to wake her. Poor kitty. She had a tough day. Glad you like it, Carolyn said. Thanks for cooking. De nada. Whatever other skills she might possess, it was pretty obvious that Carolyn was a lousy cook. After she burned 2 sets of burgers, Steve took over behind the grill. Now, he settled back into the lawn chair with a content sigh. At first, he hadn't been crazy about sitting this close to the edge. With a couple of beers in him, he relaxed a little. It really is a fantastic view. The universe spun above them, casting a warm glow on the labyrinth shelves below. Carolyn fished around in the ice chest and came up with a wine cooler. Another beer? Yeah, sure. I'll get to it eventually. He took a couple of swallows of Bud Light and burped softly, tasting extinct scorpion meat. Ooh. So, about this gift. Could you make me be president? Of what? The United States? Sure, if you like. I can't imagine why you want to be, though. Good point. How about Emperor of the Earth? Easy peasy. He thought about this for a moment. Could I be faster than a speeding bullet and leap tall buildings in a single bound and be able to shoot lasers from my eyes? Lasers? Well, I think it's technically heat vision and freeze breath. Can you do freeze breath? She nodded. Sure, it will take a couple of weeks, but I could put all that together. Is that what you like? Uh, no. I was kidding. Well, okay. You can't help yourself. I get that. Just just so that you know, I'm serious. Absolutely anything at all. When we were kids, sometimes father would play a game where he asked us to make up some impossible thing for him to do. If we stump him, we got a prize. She looked at him. No one ever did, though. Not ever. Not once. Ride a flying alligator through a flying donut made of chorizo? Body body modification is on the pearl floor. Radile 3, branch 7. Gravity is Radile 2, branch 3. That covers anti-gravity as well. Char what? Charcuterie is somewhere on turquoise, she said, searching her face with her eyes. I'd have to look it up. Anything. All jokes were gone from his voice. Anything at all. She nodded. That's... wow. That's a real nice gift, Carolyn. Thank you. He drained his beer, picked up the next one. You're welcome. I'm glad you like it. Are you overwhelmed yet? For days now. Why? If you like, I can go into a little more detail about what's been going on. I mean, answer your questions if you have any. Why you and all that. Steve cracked his beer, spraying himself with cold foam. That'd be great. But won't it break you or something? What? If you stop being really, really confusing all the time, won't it hurt? She held up her second smallest finger. What are you doing? I think it's called flipping the bird. Am I not doing it right? Middle finger. She adjusted. Better? Yeah, you got it. He paused, thinking. Okay, I got one. It seems like you know all about, you know, the regular world. Who's present, how to use a phone, all that, except when you don't. I mean, the first night you were having trouble getting the car door open. How does that work? She smiled. Well, sometimes I might have been play acting a little bit, pretending to be more helpless than I really was, in case someone was watching or whatever. They all think, though, that I'm very sheltered. I'm not supposed to know much about anything except languages, but there were also some genuine gaps. I figured maybe Mr. Cell was some guy who makes the phone you plug into the wall, you know. Um, they didn't have the portable ones when I was a kid. She rolled her eyes. And I don't think I'll ever get you guys' idea of clothes. Yeah, so you were an actual kid? You're not from outer space? Yeah, no. That's ridiculous. Whatever gave you that idea? I don't know, TV or something? Well, are you are you guys all possessed by demons or maybe something magical? Oh God, shut up before you embarrass yourself. I'm sorry, he said, meaning it. I just, Carolyn, I can't begin to imagine something that would explain all this. No, not a demon, and like I said, there's no such thing as magic. What then? I'm. It's like I told you the first night. I wasn't lying. I'm a librarian. Steve, consider this. I think we're using that word a different way. She nodded. Yeah, probably. When I say librarian, I think tea and cozy mysteries. Right, exactly. See? You do understand. Not really. I like tea well enough, but I don't really know what a cozy mystery is. That's just what you said the first night at Warwick Hall. That's what you think when you said librarian. When you say librarian. She looked at him the way a small animal might look up, hiding in a burrow. But it wasn't like that, she whispered. Not at all. Yeah, Steve said, leaning back. I'm starting to get that. But maybe you should tell me what it was like. So I won't ask so many dumb questions. She hesitated for a long time, looking into the middle distance. But eventually she nodded. Yeah, part of me wants to, really. She opened her mouth, frowned, shut it. But it's just, I always had to hide what I was thinking, planning. I had to hide everything, even from myself. Always. Do you understand? There was a there was a pleading quality in her voice that he never heard before. I I don't think that I do, Steve said softly. No, of course not. How could you? She nodded herself one more time. I don't even know where to start. The beginning? All right, she said. She drew in a deep breath. When she spoke, the iron was back in her voice. The beginning, then. When I was little, when I was a little girl, about 9 or 10 years old, I spent a summer living in the forest. This was about a year after father took us in, just after our parents died. I made friends with two deer, Aisha and Aisha. They were called, and oh, I should have read that better. Hold on. I made friends with two deers, Aisha and Aisha. They were called, and Carolyn talked for hours. Steve thought she might have glossed over some stuff. What exactly did she mean by heart coal? But she told him in a great detail. But she told him a great deal. She told him about David and the bull. She told him how Margaret's madness ate away at her little by little, until one day, licking tears from the cheek of a dead man was fun. She talked a little about how Michael came to look at indoor things like feral, haunted eyes. Speaking in detached clinical terms, she told him the things David had done, showed him the ink spots on her forearm where he had nailed her to the desk with her pens. In the small hours of the morning, she came at last to Irwin, who had been her thunder of the East. Well, she said, drowning the last of her wine. Aren't you going to tell me what an asshole I am? Steve shook his head. No, I'm not. Other people might, but I'm not. She waited for a beat, then two. But nothing. I'm kind of a shitty Bush League Buddhist, Carolyn. But one of the first thing they tell you is to try to look at other people with compassion, not pity. That can be sort of tough. That could be sort of a tough distinction to make. At least at first. But compassion. In your case, that's not hard. I probably would have shot myself about 5 minutes after I saw that kid get roasted alive. I literally cannot imagine what that must have been like. Peter did, Carolyn said softly. Jennifer, too, I think. What? Shot themselves. After the bull. Well, Jennifer used poison. She looked at him, lost. She looked up at him, lost. Father brought them back. Then he punished them. 50 lashes or something. I forget. But not you? Not me, what? You never try to kill yourself or running away some other way? No, never. Carolyn's eyes were like granite against which soft things might smash or be broken. My work was still before me, you see. Right now, she isn't acting. Steve realized this is what she is when she doesn't have to pretend. He said, Jesus, very softly. Roasted the kid alive. He felt numb. Carolyn shut her eyes. When she opened them again, the shields were back up. I think it's time for bed. No, I didn't. It's okay. I really am tired. Wayne smiled. This was a big day for me, and I'm just. I don't talk much. I almost never talk about myself. I feel. I don't know. Vulnerable? Long pause. Yeah, that. I'm sorry. Don't be. It isn't your fault. It's just. I'm not big on whatever you call it. Basic human contact? Whatever. Whatever it, whatever it makes me uncomfortable. But you asked, and I told you, and now you know. Steve nodded. One thing I am really sorry for, though, is that I put you through so much, she said. It must be confusing, upsetting. I probably could have handled your part of this better. Oh, do you think so? Do you really, Steve? I just, for future reference, I probably would have done your little jog for a small fee. 2,000 bucks, maybe. All that stuff with framing me for murder was overkill. He nodded. He nodded his head a couple of times, wide eyed, exaggerated. Yep, overkill, big time. Okay, sure. But if you hadn't been resurrected, the dead ones would have. Wait, hold up. If it hadn't been what? Nothing. What did you say, Carolyn? She reached out, almost, but not quite touching him. Steve? Hmm. I'll tell you if you want, but you'll be happier not knowing. He considered this for a long moment. Yeah, okay. Coming from you, I'm prepared to accept that. He rubbed his temples. Anyways, I've I've got a mother of all consolation prizes. Right. You have you've got oh wait. Have you got any idea what you might want? No, not really. Okay. Well, that's about it. We'll talk more tomorrow. Did you bring like s- sleeping bags or something? What? Oh, no. There are dormitories below the J floor. I made one up for you. American style. How do you mean? Well, I sort of borrowed a penthouse out of a hotel. I mean, have you heard of Al Marjan? It's supposed to be really nice. Come on, I'll show you. Part 4. Good night, she said. I'll be upstairs if you need anything. You're not going to bed? Not just yet. I have a couple of things to take care of first. Thanks. Steve shut the door with a small measure of relief. The hall below the J floor was like being inside a metal artery of some giant beast. What? Inside a metal artery of some giant beast. But she was right. The penthouse, wherever she had gotten it, was really nice. If perhaps a trifle exotic for his taste. The couch alone is probably worth more than my apartment. It was comfy though. Naga fell asleep on it immediately. Steve made himself a drink and explored a little, then plopped down next to her. Naga stopped snoring, then raised her head and showed him a fang. He rubbed her between the ears. Go back to sleep, grumpy pants. All of the writing on the remote was in Arabic, but on button aren't hard to figure out. The TV also had a split screen feature. After a bit of fumbling, he set it to watch CNN, Fox, and Al Jazeera all at once. David's dominion had progressed, it seemed. Now he was visible to the naked eye. It was still night in Virginia, but in places like Sydney, Beijing, and Fiji, crowds of commuters drift slack-jawed and motionless through city streets, watching the black dawn of a new age. As promised, David was warm enough and about sun-sized, but even at his brightest, he was very faint, a dark gray disk against the backdrop of stars. CNN had a bunch of astrophysicists on teleconference. Anderson Cooper was pulling them about why the sun was black all of a sudden. What, pray tell, was up with that? Some guy from Harvard was going on about dark matter, how poorly understood it was. Steve listened to him for a few minutes, then saluted him with his scotch. A valiant effort. He flipped channels for an hour or so, increasingly drunk, but too wound up to sleep. MTV was doing a Beavis and Butthead revival, complete with video. There was, of course, endless footage of the fire at the White House, the explosion at the Capitol. There had been a small earthquake in California. Nothing to get excited about, really. They had some footage of the black sun filmed from the little cupola thing on the International Space System, which was pretty. The vice president was governing from a secure, undisclosed location. A couple of Norwegian snowboarders claimed that they saw part of the glacier get up and walked away. That was obviously ridiculous. But before and after photos showed a big chunk of the glacier in question had indeed gone missing. Also, the moon might be just a bit wobbly, gravitational anomalies perhaps caused by the solar incident were suspected. Yeah, Steve said. Fuck this. He went out the double doors of the penthouse, leaving them open in case Naga got restless. Carolyn? He called. The metal halls of the dormitories were rounded, arterial, maybe 100 yards long. It was very dark. Carolyn? No answer. He went anyways, patting down the uneven metal in his sock. He was much drunker than he had realized. But he found... Sorry. He was much drunker than he realized, it seems. But he found that he moved at a deliberate pace. He didn't stumble too badly. At the far end of the hall oak stairs, rounded and smooth by the passage of uncomfortable bare feet, floated in midair. Steve climbed them to stand among the stacks of the library. He had worried about how he might find her in the vast space, but it wasn't hard. Carolyn hovered a couple of 100 yards above the floor, spinning in place like a figure skater doing a pirouette. Her arms were thrust above her in a V. The loose, oversized sleeves of her robe fluttered as she spun. She was shouting at the top of her lung, babbling in a language Steve didn't recognize, still covered in David's blood, now dry and clotted. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Steve couldn't tell whether she was sobbing or laughing, maybe both. Beneath her, the jade floor glowed. The jade floor glowed. Looking up, Steve saw the universe he knew hanging suspended in the center of the library. Carolyn's shadow lay over it like black wings. Steve watched this for a time. He had come out there meaning to speak to her, to explain to her how bad things were outside. No, explain how bad things were outside. Explain her mistake. They would have laughed after, but seeing her like this, he could think of nothing at all that he might say. Eventually, he turned fled back down the metal hall to the penthouse, and slammed the door behind him. Naga raised her head at the sound. He went into the bathroom, slamming the door behind him as well, then bent double over the toilet, threw up once, twice, again. He spat thick drools in the bowl, oily, sweet, beaded his forehead. Oily sweat beaded his forehead. He thought of Carolyn spinning, cackling through thought. What? He thought of Carolyn spinning, cackling, thought of the dispassionate, just relaying information tone in which she told of an axe murderer at dinner, told of children roasted alive. Seeing her at the bar that first night, he had thought, naturally enough, that she was like him. He understood now how wrong that was. He went back out to the living room. Daga was waiting for him, wide awake, real concern in her eyes. Steve opened a bottle of water and patted her hindquarters. I'm okay. I'm okay. Oh. Let's try that. It's okay. I'm okay. But he wasn't. He was beginning to understand, and he wasn't okay. We're the only ones in here, he thought. No help. No one else is coming. What are we gonna do, huh? What are we gonna do? Naga didn't answer. Back on CNN, Anderson Cooper had gotten around to an old woman with her bright blue eyes. She had the words Gretel Abendroth and Lucasian Professor written under her head. She was answering Anderson's questions, or trying to, choking with laughter, tears streaming from her eyes. She said that the other professors were fools, said that the current theory could never be stretched to include the black sun. She cackled at them, saying, admit it. Saying, you don't know any more than I do. Our understanding is a bad joke. It's always has been. Some of the panelists took offense to this. One of them said she sounded like a superstitious peasant. Another said something like, okay, maybe it's not dark matter. Why didn't she explain it to them if she was so goddamn smart? Anderson Cooper nodded, concerned. Ambedroth went quiet. Steve, a longtime viewer of talk shows, thought she might be on the verge of tears. But when she spoke, she sounded calm enough. I think perhaps God is angry. Steve suddenly wanted very much to buy Dr. Ambedroth a drink. In all of the world, she was the only other person who really got it. Well, Steve said, you're not wrong, but it's worse than that. He cast a shifty, paranoid glance into the shadows. I think she might be out of her fucking mind. Hearing himself say this, the thoughts came to him fully formed, as from the void. The vocabulary of such a creature would be different from what I am used to, different from what I know. It was in that moment that his first began to understand what he had to do. End of chapter 12. Hoo-wee. A lot to unpack. The library. Jade floors, pyramid structure with a helix staircase at the center, reaching all the way to the top, and at it, a football size plane with the universe sitting at the top, having a quiet barbecue, and unveiling all the dirty details of the past. Compassion, anger, the new sun, and the death of the old. Steve coming to a realization at the end of this chapter that he must take action to something that we are not privy to just yet. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Also, I believe we are to be in Steve's shoe, right? If we were this chosen clumsy one, right? How would you react to the angry new god that you initially resonated with or thought you knew and adored a little? Is adored the correct word? Admire? No, not admired. Charmed, I guess. Charmed by. Took you down a spiral of events that you cannot even comprehend till you were drunk in a hotel room with a tiger that you are now closer to than anything else, right? Even to his dog Petey. I think Cocker Spaniel, if I remember correctly. Oh, I can't remember now. But him and his tiger, they now occupy a library with an angry god and a black sun. A hairy-toed black sun. Full of heat and anguish and energy. Um, wow. All right. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sort of now kind of hungry for barbecue and a nice cold chill beer. Oh, just to crack one open right now. Right? That'd be nice. Oh, shit. I just realized I don't think I was recording. Well, I'm live streaming, but I don't think this is recorded. What a shame. How do I save this? I guess I don't. I'll have to reread it. Is that true? Oh, I'll probably just reread it again later at a different time. But thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this chapter.